Imagine Stan Lee, not just as the mastermind behind Marvel's greatest heroes, but as a performer himself, long before he was a household name for his famous cameos. It's a fascinating thought, isn't it? While everyone remembers his appearances in the MCU, few know that his actual first big-screen cameo was in a completely different kind of film, a little-known R-rated thriller called The Ambulance. Before he was ubiquitously popping up in Marvel movies, Stan Lee made his mark as the co-creator of some of the most iconic characters in pop culture history. Over 6 decades, he transformed Marvel into a global media powerhouse. Always the savvy promoter, he built his own image into something almost as recognizable as Spider-Man or the Hulk. His likeness started appearing in Marvel Comics way back in the 1960s. These brief comic book appearances eventually evolved into live-action roles, cementing his status as Marvel's ultimate cameo king. But he didn't limit himself to superhero flicks. His first foray onto the big screen actually came in Larry Cohen's quirky comedy horror thriller, The Ambulance. Now, you might be scratching your head. Stan Lee, the Marvel Comics editor, showing up in a movie about a sinister ambulance, kidnapping people off the streets of New York? It sounds like a bizarre pairing, right? But actually it makes perfect sense when you dig a little deeper. Both Lee and Cohen were Bronx natives who became deeply associated with New York City. Lee, of course, through his stable of NYC-based superheroes, and Cohen through his guerrilla-style filmmaking, capturing the raw energy of the city in cult classics like God Told Me To and Q, the Winged Serpent. The two met in the 80s when Cohen was tapped to write a screenplay for Lee's Doctor Strange movie, forging a friendship. They even hung out with Bob Kane from time to time. Unfortunately, that Doctor Strange project never materialized, but then came The Ambulance, and Cohen had a perfect role in mind for Lee. Cohen recalled, "I said to Stan, I think I'm going to make the lead character a cartoonist who works for Marvel." I asked him to play himself. He was really anxious to do it. It was the only time Stan has had some real scenes to play in a movie and some real dialogue. In the Marvel pictures, he's mostly a walk-on or an extra. With me, he had a real character to play, even if it was the part of Stan Lee. And this is the part most people miss. It wasn't just a wave to the camera, it was an actual role. So, what exactly unfolds in The Ambulance? And how does Stan Lee perform? The movie stars Eric Roberts as Josh Baker, a comic book artist, sporting a glorious mullet, working at Marvel. He bravely approaches Cheryl Turner, Janine Turner, the woman of his dreams, on a busy Manhattan street and asks her out. But then, disaster strikes. Cheryl collapses, showing symptoms of diabetes, and a strange, vintage ambulance suddenly appears, whisking her away before Josh can even get her last name. Understandably concerned, Josh tries to track her down, but he's shocked to discover that no hospital in the city has any record of her admittance. Lieutenant Spencer, played by the legendary James Earl Jones, is skeptical and suspects Josh might be involved in her disappearance. Things escalate when Cheryl's diabetic friend also vanishes, and Josh himself is poisoned, landing him in a hospital, fearing for his life. Luckily, he finds an ally in his roommate Elias, Red Buttons, a seasoned reporter for the New York Post who promises to help him investigate and expose the story. Meanwhile, Cheryl is in grave danger. Dr. Frank, Eric Braeden, reveals his sinister plan, using diabetic patients like her as guinea pigs for illegal and dangerous experimental surgeries. Can Josh and Elias rescue her before it's too late? Stan Lee appears in just a couple of scenes as Josh's good-natured boss, but it's a delight to see him exchange dialogue with Eric Roberts, years before his ubiquitous, though often brief, appearances became his trademark. Now, let's be honest, his performance is a bit stiff, but he clearly grew more comfortable playing himself as he accumulated more cameos. Still, his appearance is perfectly in line with Larry Cohen's style, as the cult filmmaker always had a soft spot for stunt casting. But here's where it gets controversial. Some might argue that Lee's initial awkwardness adds to the film's charm, making it a truly unique piece of cinematic history. Beyond Stan Lee's cameo, Is the ambulance worth your time? Absolutely. As a longtime fan of B-movie legend Larry Cohen, the mind behind homicidal mutant babies in It's Alive, a giant Aztec god nesting in the Chrysler Building in Q the Winged Serpent, and addictive, malevolent desserts in The Stuff, I consider The Ambulance one of his best. On the surface, a film about illegal medical experiments sounds like a standard medical thriller. Think Extreme Measures with Hugh Grant, but without the laughs. But in the hands of an unconventional director like Cohen, it becomes a wildly entertaining ride. While his films often touch on serious themes, he never lets the horror overshadow the wacky digressions, quirky characters, and outrageous set pieces. A big part of what makes The Ambulance so enjoyable is the casting. Eric Roberts delivers one of his most likable performances as the determined but overwhelmed comic artist. The film gets even better when he teams up with veteran comedian and Oscar winner Red Buttons. James Earl Jones gives a surprisingly offbeat performance as the grumpy, gum-chewing detective, and I personally would have loved to see more of Eric Braeden's over-the-top mad scientist. The Ambulance itself is a star, filmed from low angles, prowling the city streets like Ecto-1's evil twin. The Ambulance isn't exactly terrifying, but it's consistently funny and features a couple of exciting action sequences, including Josh's perilous escape from the back of the ambulance. StanLee fans should definitely check it out for his first film cameo, but stay for the rest of the movie. It's an absolute blast and a fantastic introduction to the wonderful world of Larry Cohen films. So what do you think? Does knowing the context of Cohen's and Lee's friendship make the cameo more meaningful? And more importantly, is The Ambulance now on your watch list? Let me know in the comments.